Hi, I'm Will, and I like toys. We have done a few different videos now. If you haven't watched them and you are interested in toys or comics, definitely go back and watch them. It started with a journey through a big batch of Transformers I bought secondhand from a comic book shop that I've been going through and listing for sale. And then we did a couple of videos on some recent European pickups. Well, today, and in probably at least the next video, so this will be a two-parter, I wanted to talk about crossover toys. Sometimes people call them collabs or collaborations. And of course, I was making a list of ideas for videos, and Pixel Dan beat me to this one. But I have a few extra things to say about it that I don't think that he said in that original video or his new follow-up this week. So the reason that this is fresh on my mind, and obviously on others' minds, like Pixel Dan, is there were a bunch of new collaborations announced at San Diego Comic-Con. So basically what a collaboration or a crossover, I like to call them a crossover, toys are, is when you take two different brands, two different licenses, at least two, and they combine to make something slightly new and different, yet strangely familiar. It's something that we've seen for a long time. You may go to a toy store and see little people that are themed after Elton John or Deadpool or RuPaul's Drag Race or the Golden Girls. Or you'll see Hot Wheels cars that are, well, at least with a Hot Wheels car, I'm not going to quantify this as a crossover. It's just a little version of like an iconic pop culture vehicle. But like at Comic-Con, they announced Hot Wheels Transformers crossover. Hot Wheels is owned by Mattel, Transformers is owned by Hasbro, so it's a intercompany crossover where they look like Hot Wheels cars, come in Hot Wheels looking packaging, but turn into unique robots. They're really cool looking. I do think that that's a pretty successful, interesting, makes total sense kind of crossover. Crossovers aren't new. Back in the 80s and 90s, the Ninja Turtles did all kinds of crossovers. They had Star Trek Ninja Turtles. They had ones that were definitely D&D inspired, and I will count that, even though it wasn't officially D&D. There was, a barbarian, a dwarf, a minotaur. I'll even say that, like this one, which is not an official crossover, it's a cave turtle, but that outfit is 100% inspired by Fred Flintstone. So this is, the Ninja Turtles, that kind of thing isn't new to them. And we do still have those kinds of things happening today. So I'm going to talk about some of the crossovers I own, some that I don't own, and which ones I like, which ones I don't like. And then in the next video, we'll talk about some upcoming crossovers and that were announced at Comic-Con and why this continues to be a thing. But then I'm going to talk about some that I'd love to see. And if the right person watches it, it would be so cool if one of them got made. I don't even want any credit. I just want to own one of the toys. Okay. So basically what happens when a crossover or collab happens is they're trying to... I studied marketing in college. They're basically trying to hit two markets. So, for example, I'm going to use this one right here. This is a He-Man Ninja Turtle that was made by Mattel, and the Ninja Turtles are owned by Nickelodeon and normally made by Playmates. But the Ninja Turtles, like I said, historically have licensed out their brand and their name and also worked with a lot of other brands. This is Michelangelo, obviously sporting a He-Man sort of battle armor He-Man with a He-Man inspired logo and even a He-Man wig. Now the wig was very polarizing amongst the fans. I think it's very funny because if you read the comic, Michelangelo puts on a wig specifically because he thinks He-Man looks cool and he's trying to be like him. So it's not actually hair, it's a wig. The Turtles of Grayskull is what this line was called. So mixing Ninja Turtles and Grayskull from He-Man. These were hit or miss. Honestly, this one, I think, I got it on clearance. I think it's pretty cool. I think some other ones, like I think Master Splinter as the, as like the king Gray Skull one and Trapjaw mixed with a Mouser. Like, there were some really cool ones. But so, the reason that they made this is because He-Man fans and Ninja Turtle fans will buy this. And then people who are both. So it is a way for both companies to increase their fan base, increase their crossover. It's like having a YouTube video where you have someone do a cameo. If you ever watch the Try Guys, where they have Smosh appear, or Dropout, and they all mix with each other. That's because they're trying to expand their brands and get new audience. So this is an example. I think it's pretty cool. Some of the other Ninja Turtle examples I do have that I like. I have Power Rangers ones. So that one was made by Mattel. These were made by Hasbro, because Hasbro has the Power Rangers. And Mattel has He-Man. So these are very different scale, very different style. They did come with additional heads that are just Power Ranger helmets, but I like the turtle ones. Once again, the Ninja Turtles have done a lot of crossover comics. They've crossed over with the Ghostbusters, with Naruto, with He-Man, with Savage Dragon, with Cowboys of Moo Mesa, with Power Rangers. So anytime they do a crossover comic, and they do crossover with Batman. They even did an animated movie based off that one. That were 2-packs. And you could get, like, Michelangelo dressed like Robin or Batman. So this is another really cool one. They did do all the Turtles, and they also did Casey Jones and did they do Casey Jones? Yeah, Casey Jones and April O'Neil and Shredder. So that's great. Power Rangers is another line that has been known to do some crossovers. One of my favorite ones, actually, the only other Power Rangers crossover one I do own, is a putty, a Cobra Kai putty. So they did a crossover with Cobra Kai, the Netflix show, which is a great show. And you could get Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso and some of the other characters as the Ninja Power Rangers from one of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movies where they're in the ninja outfits. But for the putties, they put them in the skeleton Halloween costume that Johnny Lawrence and the other Cobra Kai members wear in the original Karate Kid. And then it's got the Cobra Kai logo on the back. I thought this was cool. I've always thought the putties were kind of neat, but kind of bland in the torso. But the idea of this skeleton Halloween costume and the Cobra Kai, very happy to have that. Some other Ninja Turtle ones, and then we'll get into some non-Ninja Turtle ones. I talked about this on my new toys of 2025, Universal Monsters. Ninja Turtles has done crossovers with them before, so this is not new, but NECA is still doing them, and they're not just doing redos. Like in the original line, Raphael was the Mummy, but Michelangelo's the Mummy in this one, so they're not just identical redos, and they're pretty awesome. And I know they have some new ones slated to come out. There's like a Krang one that mixes with like a classic Universal alien, and then there's like a 2-headed monster that comes with, I think, 3 different turtle heads, so you can swap them around, and that one looks really cool. But so I'm a big fan of Egyptian mythology, so I've got this one in my collection. Now, this next one, Playmates did some Ninja Turtle crossovers that don't make sense to me. They did do a crossover with Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. However, when they did that pack, it's a 2-pack, and instead of being like, Shredder in a Cobra Kai gi and some Foot Clan in Cobra Kai and, Master Splinter as Mr. Miyagi, which would be cool, you basically got a pack where it was a turtle in a ninja, in like a very simple gi and ninja costume, and then Johnny Lawrence or Daniel LaRusso. They did the same thing for Stranger Things, which also doesn't make sense. He-Man did also crossover with Stranger Things, and at least there they did like they did Vecna as sort of a He-Man origins, very similar to that Michelangelo style. But so Stranger Things did a Ninja Turtles crossover, and what they did is it was just a 2-pack. So you got 2-packs where you got a Stranger Things character and a turtle, but the turtle is gigantic, completely out of scale with the Stranger Things characters because the turtles are historically smaller. It doesn't look bad. It looks very similar to the original like animation comic book illustration of the Ninja Turtles. I bought this on super clearance at a flea market specifically because I like the Hopper and the Hawaiian shirt and his bell bottoms. He looks like he's like on a mixture of like Shipwreck and Chuckles from G.I. Joe, which is why I bought him. Don't think the turtle was super successful, but it does have the tail, which not all turtles do. They have decided to remove those in later years because they thought they looked odd. So now the last few crossovers that I have are some Disney ones, which are interesting. So I have some Disney Indiana Jones crossovers, and this was from before Disney owned Lucasfilm. So I've got Mickey as Indy, and he's even got a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow. Like there's a little discoloration in his lower part of his face, specifically to be like that Indy 5 o'clock shadow. And he also came in a pack with Sala, Goofy as Sala, and the Ark of the Covenant. I also have some, they did Star Wars ones, once again, before Lucasfilm was owned by Disney. So, like, this is Donald as a Stormtrooper and Donald as Darth Maul. And the helmet on the Stormtrooper does come off. And the Stormtrooper one, they did some loose ones, but I got a pack that came with also Goofy as Darth Vader, Minnie as Leia, Mickey is kind of a little Obi-Wan, kind of a little Luke. It's unclear which one he is. He's dressed sort of like both. And then they also had Chip and Dale as Ewoks, which were pretty cool. So they did a whole bunch. They did very few Indiana Jones, but a ton of Star Wars ones. And I wish I had bought more. But so those are some of the crossovers that are favorites that I own. There are a bunch of crossovers that I like that I don't own yet. In addition to doing Disney character crossovers with Star Wars, Disney also, for a limited time, around the same time, did Muppets Star Wars. So you got, like, Pluto as R2-D2, and, I'm sorry. You got Bunsen, Pluto was R2-D2 in the Star Wars one. You got Bunsen and Beaker as R2-D2 and C-3PO. You got Link Hogthrob as Lando. Was he Lando? No, he was Han Solo. Scooter was Lando, Animal as Boba Fett, Kermit as Luke, Piggy as Leia. So that was a really cool series. I do not own any. I love the Muppets, and I wish I did have them. So like I said before, the Ninja Turtles have done a lot of crossovers. Other than the classic Universal Monsters and a couple of the modern ones, the ones that have always really interested me are the vintage Star Trek, specifically Donatello as Spock. It seems like a no-brainer, a perfect crossover, and one day I hope I find it. They have done some modern versions of him like that, including for the newest animated series, and they played it off like it was a Halloween costume, which is great, and I've considered getting that one, but I do want the vintage. Transformers. I mentioned that they've done some crossovers. That is the easiest one to do a crossover for, because you take an iconic vehicle and make it turn into a new Autobot or Decepticon. They have done some with themselves, like they did some G.I. Joe Hasbro ones, where G.I. Joe Transformers, where you have, Bumblebee is like a four-wheel sort of, like Jeep, and it comes with, like, Sergeant Stalker. And they've re-released those, and they did them in the comics, and, like, Megatron's a Decepticon tank. Those are cool. But I prefer when they introduce the Transformers as other characters. So there are two specifically that I've always thought were cool. The Ghostbusters and the Back to the Future. Of course, when I bought this lot of Transformers, there's an instruction booklet for the Ghostbusters one, and there's some mini accessories for the Back to the Future one, which we'll see in the instructions and accessories little video I'll do for all the random things that don't pair with anything. Now, they even released one-off comics where they explain why there's a Transformer that is a time-traveling DeLorean and why there's a Transformer that's an old, hearse turned ghost hunting thing. But they did give them new names. So I believe the Back to the Future one name is Gigawatt. And that the Ghostbusters one, I think, is Ectotron. And I think those are so cool. They did do the reverse, where they had an Optimus Prime that was colored like the Ghostbusters colors, and that's cool, but I much prefer the other direction. So, those are some that I would love to find one day and add to my collection. They did other ones that were interesting. They did, like, the X-Men X-Jet and it turned into like a robot with different mutant powers. They've done Star Wars ones where they turn into robot versions of the Star Wars characters, like they did one of the Mandalorian. And they even did some Jurassic Park ones, where you get a dinosaur in one of the iconic Jurassic Park vehicles, and then the vehicle turns into like a robot mode that looks like one of the characters. Like it looks like the character that, oh my god, what is his name? That Newman from Seinfeld is. I can't think of his name, and it's going to drive me nuts for a couple of weeks. And then they also had one that looked like Alan Grant. So those are neat, but that Back to the Future and the Ghostbusters one, they were like their own characters, and it seemed to work even in the comic stories. And they recently, I think, released like a Sonic the Hedgehog ones and Street Fighter ones and Naruto, and they even did, I think they did the Ninja Turtle Party Wagon at one point. So those are some of the crossovers that have been done, that I own, what a crossover is, and some of the ones I don't own that I'm keeping an eye out for. Next time, we'll talk about upcoming crossovers that were announced at Comic-Con, including some crossover comic books, because the crossovers are not just in the toys. Like I've said, some of these had tie-in comics, but some of them just have comics that cross over. And then we'll do my favorite part, the what-if imagination sort of game of weird crossovers that I wish they'd do, but they haven't done yet. But it seems right that they would do them. So, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, subscribe or like, comment, any of that. If you didn't enjoy it, probably also do those things. Any engagement is good. But until next time, I'm Will, and I like toys. Thank you.